Hello, it's Pigsy doing another video. See where I go with my conversation today. It's going to be fairly random. I guess really it's just to be aware of how lucky and how special you are. The fact you're listening to this and able to think about what's being said, and you know how precious life can be, and how strange it is sometimes what we're dealt with life to deal with. So it's quite important. In essence, I guess it's to lay out the decisions that bring about the most positive results for you in the universe. You have to have a kind of relationship. I think it might help. So some people may be out of tune with the universe, or maybe there's a bigger destiny for them. So, I mean, I heard recently about a colleague of mine, and I haven't met her. She just works for the same company, and basically she went out for a family meal with her partner. Her partner had been working around the clock, maybe he's running his own business, I can't remember. And then there was a telltale sign of he had a kind of headache, but it was an earache, and he didn't think too much of it. And then he went to bed that night, and basically he didn't wake up. She woke up and found him dead, and paramedics turned up and they could revive him, and he wasn't breathing or anything, he was well gone. And so what they found is that he had a hemorrhage in his brain and died. So some people, where they have strokes, it's hard to say they're lucky ones that are left behind, because they've usually lost a lot in the process, but it's quite common. And that's why people shouldn't, well, it's a dodgy subject, statins. You need saturated cholesterol to protect your body. The brain's got a lot of cholesterol in it anyway, but a lot can go wrong. So something I have to look at the brain health. I did find some benefits when I used colloidal silver, because it's a oxide, so it gets more oxygen into places. And I just sort of felt the feeling at the top of my brain stem, so I'm going to have to get some and have some. I think it might help thin the blood and other things. There's some other things it does with the blood. It clears up from bacteria and stuff like that. So if you've got a place where your circulation might be low, then there can be a situation of maybe some bacteria building up in there. This could be affecting the brain barrier in some way, and bacteria and stuff getting in there, create dirty blood, feeding on dirty blood, and then you've got issues where bits of tissue might come off, and they end up as turn into some type of clot, narrowing of the arteries. So the thing is with cholesterol though is you don't want it if it's building up on an area, it's likely because there is damage in that part of the brain. And so when it comes to things like strokes, and there's an issue around bleeding or obstruction, they're probably both damaged. They come from a damaged area of the brain. The body's either trying to sort of pad it out to stop it bleeding, or it's just bled because it hasn't got the protection in place, and it's always cause for concern. It's very difficult. I mean, the other thing is, how do you monitor your own behaviour? Well, if you have kind of headaches and things that last long periods of time in funny places, quite acute sharpness pains, they could be from bleed. Other things, if your eyesight starts getting affected and other things like that, there's a few possibilities. And also, if you suffer from a lot of inflammation, things like dry fasting will help reduce that. And it might help in them kind of situations. Well, on recovery from injuries, brain injuries, it's just something that hasn't. Well, it's not a case of it's not being scientifically proven or anything like that. There just isn't the evidence there. The information's not there. So yeah, there isn't a body of proof there. Just what can how many benefits there are to dry fasting when it comes to situations of head and brain injury. And then other things to look out for would be if you had a head injury and you're not feeling quite right since, just to be observant. I mean, the problems I tend to have is probably with tension in the neck, some of the discs and so on. I just need to align my spine back up again, which I've been doing. It's fine. I make sure I keep a straight posture, but I don't want it to weaken. And it could be that I'm doing certain press-ups and so on, and they're not really working as technique as well as I like, and still leaving me sort of vulnerable in some way. I'm just pushing it, and rather than with the pressure being spread out across the back and maybe into the lower back takes the brunt of it, it's taking your shoulders and the neck. So we just have to see. How it all works out. So I don't know if there's any other things that would work towards stroke care or prevention. Definitely keeping your blood pressure down helps. Another reason to do fasting. As for me, I don't know. People are saying you look thin, but I can see there's some. There's an inflammation from drinking fluids. If I just reel in the fluids a bit, that'll probably change that. I was just looking at a picture. I thought I looked a bit thinner in the face, but then again, I'm sort of changing my appearance anyway. So I guess I'm just rolling with that. Keeping focus on these things. So yeah, definitely scary times. And it's not the first time I've heard about a situation like that. Someone's mentioned about another partner died quite early on, and it was at a golf course. He was there, and I think he collapsed. And then they called the paramedics. They tried to keep him. They did CPR on him, tried to keep him alive. The problem was the brain, the obstruction had sort of stopped function of that area of the brain, and the person was basically dead. So brain dead. I mean, they're still there. I mean, keep them alive in one way, but they don't see the point, because they define a person by, I guess, his intellectual awareness, I guess, and conscious engagement. You know what decides that person to live in or dead, that kind of thing. And having the organs are just an option for transplants. So I see people. Yeah, so it's just hard to talk about some stuff like that. And there's anything else going on? Yeah, and that's it. And also it's a warning for myself. Know your limits. So if you're working long hours, be sure not to push yourself too far. Give yourself holidays. Use holidays for the right reasons, and that's a bit of recovery, not just playing hard as well as working hard, because you can still wear yourself out, like on a long flight somewhere, and then you're off doing things that might pressurise the body. So yeah. Anyway, this is Big sign off, and speak to you soon.